skies. Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again.
What's going on, everyone? Good morning. I hope you guys are doing well. I am, of course, am your host, Steve Silver, and this is Stateside Footy, back Saturday morning in the comfortable 7 a.m. Time slot here. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope the weekend has got off to a good start for you guys, especially for those over there in the UK. It's good to have you guys aboard. Before we begin, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. And all right, man, let's get into it. All right. So, as you know, I guess you can call it the thumbnail here. That has the slogan of "This is the weirdest season ever." Listen, this has been really one of the weirdest seasons I think I can remember. As a matter of fact, I don't think I can really point to a season that I can compare and contrast with the one that just completed for Tottenham Hotspur. Like, if I close my eyes and try to point, I don't think I can do it. A season that has, 21, 22 losses on the season, and yet there was still a trophy at the end of it, right? The weird thing is this, when you look at the losses, you would point to a team that is struggling for consistency. Fair enough. Usually when you have that many losses, you would be like, oh, okay, well, this team's shit. And yet they win a trophy. Go figure, man. Go figure. But, I'll take it. I'll take the trophy. I don't think anybody wouldn't take the trophy. And of course, in the midst of one of the worst seasons in Tottenham history, they also secure Champions League for next season. And of course, this upcoming summer is going to be just one of the hopefully will be one of the better summers in Tottenham Hotspur history. And of course, we're going to start right there with news and notes. Before we get into it, we do have a few in the chat though. Wayne Bonner, good morning, everyone. Afternoon. Hope you're well and having a great Saturday. Wayne, I hope you're having a great Saturday. My guy. Dan Davenport. Hello, Steve. It's 12 dinner time over here in England. Okay. You guys eat at 12 in the afternoon? Fair enough. If I was Levy and Paratici, Ange would be sacked for finishing 17th. Okay. Well, listen. Chances are pretty good, Dan, that is going to happen. But we do have some news and notes that I want to get into before we get into the main crux of it. And we'll start with Rodrigo Betancourt, the Spurs number 6 slash number 8, depending on how that midfield formation figures. Rodrigo Betancourt is expected to sign a contract extension. Now, here's the rub. Rodrigo Betancourt wants to know if Ange Postecoglou is going to stay. The word is he wants clarification. I don't think there's anything wrong with clarification. I would if I were in his shoes, I would probably want that as well too. But that is the news that Rodrigo Betancourt wants to stay at Tottenham Hotspur, but he wants to know if Ange Postecoglou is going to stick around. Now, if you're Rodrigo Betancourt, and you've had the type of season that you've had, some up, some down, but that being said, as the season progressed, I think Rodrigo Betancourt came into his own. I think Rodrigo Betancourt showed that not only can he be trusted, that he can be depended upon. Now, Rodrigo Betancourt is not going to be the type of person who is going to be a potential future captain. I wouldn't go that far. What's up, bud? But that being said, he is also somebody who has emerged as somebody that can be trusted on. And the thing about Rodrigo is, one of the things that I noticed about Rodrigo Betancourt was, as the season was winding down, when we were looking for someone to potentially get on the end of balls, somebody that was going to be able to crash the box, there was Rodrigo Betancourt. And I go back to the AZ Alkmaar series in the Europa League. I go to the Frankfurt series. Late in ball games when we needed something on net, it was either Christian Romero or Rodrigo Betancourt that was getting on the end of headers. Somebody that was not afraid to make runs, and somebody who could be dangerous in certain points of the game, and that was Rodrigo Betancourt. But that being said, when we also needed a defensive presence in a double pivot, it was Rodrigo Betancourt and Yves Bissouma. More Rodrigo Betancourt than Bissouma, but it is what it is. I think that, me personally, I think that Rodrigo Betancourt probably has earned an extension. And I also think that moving forward over the course of the next 3 seasons, he is going to be somebody who is going to at least alleviate a few different problems, because he can actually fill multiple positions on the field. If you need him to be a box to box, he can facilitate it. If you need him to play the 6, he can facilitate it, because he has one thing that both positions require, which is next level passing, and his ability to play that link up is something that should not be overlooked, because he is very good at doing that. And let's see. Wayne Bonner says, I like Betancourt. I'd like to see him sign a new contract regardless of the manager's situation, although I can understand his point of view. Yeah, listen, he likes Ange Postecoglou, and he's not the only one. The other guy who likes Ange Postecoglou is Christian Romero. And it is known that Christian Romero actually wants to stay with Tottenham Hotspur, but it depends on Ange Postecoglou, because there is a theme, there is a I guess you can say it a vibe. I don't like using that word, but the vibes around Tottenham Hotspur way is that as the season was coming to a close, this group became very tight-knit. Betancourt. Christian Romero has developed lifelong friendships at Tottenham Hotspur. And listen, he wants to say there will be an agreement this summer at some point. And if Ange Postecoglou decides, if Daniel Levy decides to make that switch, there's a good chance that he ends up going through the door. out the door. Now, you guys know me quite a bit for my time here on this channel. I don't like to break up chemistry, and I don't like to break up continuity. And one of the things that and what's funny is like it's funny, there's certain players, certain fans that like and this is no disrespect, you can say that, I can see them cashing out on Romero. I don't care if he leaves, he's an overrated player, that type of thing. And it's like, no. Rodrigo Betancourt is a World Cup champion, two-time Copa America champion with Argentina. And you can sit there and say, well, Argentina's got the best talent in the world. Okay, whatever. But you still have to go out there and you still have to beat the best teams in the world on an international stage. And he's done that. He's reached the top of the mountain. He knows exactly what it's like to play in the world's biggest games. And he scaled the top of the mountain with Messi and with all those guys with Argentina. And we just saw him in another big game not that long ago on May 21st, 10 days ago, when we scaled the Europa League mountain and won. And he was also named man of the tournament. It's like when you needed somebody huge to step up in a big moment, it was Christian Romero. Some will probably say it was Mikey Van de Ven clearing off the line. Okay, fair. But that being said, let's give the dude his credit. These two have formed a center back pairing is something that you don't want to get rid of. And by the way, I don't think like in the prime of Toby Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen, people were talking about getting rid of one of the other. I don't remember those conversations because you actually want to keep good center back pairings together. The spine of your team is something that you want to build around and not necessarily chop and change. And a lot of this depends on Ange Postecoglou and whether or not he is going to leave. Now, the rumor was that that's most likely going to happen. And there's that potential of, the potential of having Xavi come in. But that being said, you also have to respect the fact that this is a close-knit group. Do Spurs need upgrades? Without a doubt. I don't think anybody can look at this and say it's a finished product yet. But that being said, without a doubt, you want to keep the spine of your team intact. And as this season was winding down, in the most important games, that back five ended up being rock solid for Tottenham Hotspur. Just like I thought it was going to be at the start of the season. Without a doubt. Would I like to see Christian Romero sign an extension? 100%. He's got 2 years left on his deal. Now, granted, Spurs don't have to do anything. But that being said, one of the things that players need is their respect, and respect comes in the form of dollars. 100% without a doubt. Respect always comes in the form of dollars, and Christian Romero wants to be paid as a top 5 center back in the world. Now, is he? That's debatable. But 100%, that's exactly what he wants. He wants to be seen 100% as one of the best. Now, when it comes to that, you're going to have to perform. But we have Wayne Bonner right here. It says Romero is a player we definitely have to keep. When he played more defensive football, he shows just how damn good he is. Yeah. But also think about this though. Think about when we're playing 100% forward front foot Ange ball. He's also pretty goddamn good as well too. Him and Mikey Van de Ven keep that high line intact. There's not a lot of people in the Premier League that can ping balls over the top without having both of those guys being able to cover that ground, playing with their backs to the net. So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's like both of those dudes can play any style of football. It's just it is what it is, man. But that being said, as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, the way that I look at this is we just won our first trophy in 17 years. And I don't think it really was a fluke. I think it was we played our best football when it mattered and we got over the line. And a big part of it was Christian Romero and Mikey Van de Ven. A very big part of it. Because, listen, we played a style of football that was centrally defensive, more of a counterattacking style type of game, which means we had to be absolutely rock solid in that back four, and that's exactly what we got. That doesn't happen if Christian Romero isn't playing well, because we would figure out a way to leak goals, but that didn't happen. As a matter of fact, what was it? The second Frankfurt game away on the road, clean sheet. Second, the second leg at Bodo Glimt, clean sheet. The final, clean sheet. That's not something that that's not something that was we were able to say at any point during the season, being able to keep clean sheets. We generally leaked at least a goal, if not more. So it is what it is, man. I understand. I understand there's going to be some fans who would like to see the team sell them on and utilize the 60+ million pounds that you would get to them. But that being said, for instance, and I'll just throw this out there, if Christian Romero is thought to be around a 60 million pound player now, what happens at the end of next season, in the summer of 2026, going into his final season after coming off an even better season? He's probably going to be closer to 100 million pounds. And that's the point. Like, if you really want to sell him, that's the point you do it going in with 1 year left. Like, if you want to capitalize on Christian Romero, like the Christian Romero's high ceiling value, you do it with 1 year left, not with 2. But I digress. Let's see. Audio Artisan says, I think a new deal would take it over 200K a week. Can't see it. Don't think he deserves that much due to his lack of consistency. All right. Fair enough. There have been times where he's had brain farts. I can't deny that. North London Derby. Can't deny it. There's been moments. Wayne Bonner says if Ange were to stay and persist with his style of football, then for me we'd have to drop the inverted fullbacks. Leaves too much space to the attack. You can do it if you're inverting on one side. Question, Derma. Steve, with the players being behind Ange, will that be a major factor if Ange stays or Ange goes? I would think that it's going to play a huge one. You want to keep continuity, consistency, and chemistry. At least I would. But that being said, you have to do what's ultimately best for your football team, right? But that being said, we know that Daniel Levy didn't necessarily want to sack Mauricio Pochettino after a bad start to the season, but he did in the name of what's best for the football club. So who knows exactly what Daniel Levy is thinking. But I will say that sacking Ange Postecoglou sends a terrible message for whoever takes over. Because Ange Postecoglou just won this team their first European trophy in 50 years, 40 years. So what's the ambition? Because if trophies are the ambition and you get rid of a coach that just won you a trophy. Now, granted, I understand, man, 20 losses is a hard pill to swallow. But that being said, we didn't get relegated because there were 3 teams that were just even worse. But that being said, That being said, it was on his dime that we conceded 65 goals this season. I think we scored 64 and conceded 65. That's on his watch. And the reality of the fact is that he punted on the Premier League season. There was still a very good opportunity for this team right at the end of January when players started coming back. When we started getting our most of our first team players back. He made the decision, and Ange Postecoglou made the decision, and his players followed his lead, where he decided that the Premier League was not a priority. Winning a trophy was, and we mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. We got the trophy, but it came at a price, and his actions definitely might have consequences. I think when you look at fans, and I understand that we have 5, 6 in the chat right now, very small sample size with the Spurs fan base, but most of them are saying the exact same thing. We appreciate the trophy, but 20 league losses is just not good enough. I would have to agree. Anyway, more news and notes, and it looks like longtime Spurs assistant manager Ryan Mason is going to West Brom. I actually have no problem with this at all. I think it's time for Ryan Mason to become a head coach. And I know there's going to be people that say, Spurs fans, longtime Spurs fans that would love to have Ryan Mason stay. My question to you, number one, is what does Ryan Mason do for Tottenham Hotspur? I guess stability. I guess he brings that because he's been around forever. He's learned from some of the best coaches in the world. He's been caretaker boss, twice? But that being said, eventually, if you want to be ambitious, if you want to get yourself in a position where you can come back to Tottenham as a head coach, these are the moves that you're going to have to make. And I would probably assume that eventually he would love to be able to take over at Tottenham Hotspur and be that guy. But right now he's in a position where he can do that. He can leave and test himself. Now, last year, West Brom, the Baggies, I believe, finished 9th in the table. They did on 64 points, 2 points behind Millwall, and tied on points with Middlesbrough at the top half of the championship. West Brom scored 57 goals and conceded 47. Not a bad goal differential on the season, but the biggest issue with West Brom was the fact that I think they had 19 draws. So it's finding that next level, finding that next gear where they can actually turn some of those draws into wins, because it had 5 more of those draws turned into wins. Right there, that's 15 points. And so now you're in a playoff spot. And make no mistake, man, I don't know how you guys feel, but West Brom is kind of a big team. I grew up understanding that, West Brom had a history, had a tradition, just like Tottenham Hotspur, and a team that probably should be in the Premier League. But that being said, Ryan Mason, I think Ryan Mason is in a position where, I think this is a good first step for him. It's going to be for a team that has a lot of expectation. Now the question is West Brom going to, actually, give them some pieces in order to achieve the goal, which is promotion. It's going to take a few pieces for West Brom to inch closer to that type of promotion. The question is West Brom going to be able to do that? Now, does that mean they have to go out and, make $20 million loan moves? $20 million transfer moves? Probably no. But that being said, they're going to have to find some creativity here, because one of the things that West Brom did have a tendency to do this year, which is, leak goals at the most inopportune times. And we're unable to score when they needed to. So listen, congratulations to Ryan Mason. I hear it's a 3-year deal. He is the next head coach of West Brom. So congratulations, Ryan Mason. I think you've kind of earned it. But that being said, it is what congratulations. So Audio Artisan says there's a bunch of yo-yo teams that are too good for the championship, but not quite good enough for the Prem. Norwich, West Brom, Watford, 100%. But that being said, though, why are they yo-yo teams? It's pretty obvious, right? Balloon payments. So the reality is there are certain teams that will spend beyond their means in the championship to get to a Premier League promotion. Okay. Because they understand what happens when they get to the Premier League. I mean, their solidarity payments are what, $110 million for each team. That's on top of gate receipts and all those other things, right? So a lot of teams, what they'll do is, knowing that they have a windfall coming, they will spend what, $25 million above their projected budget, on the off chance that they're going to be able to achieve it. Now, here's the crazy thing. For a team like Wrexham, they can do that because their revenue stream, they have revenues coming in from all different angles. They're able to cover those losses. But for a team like, we'll just use West Brom for this exercise, right? So let's just say that West Brom decides that they're going to go for it. And we're seeking for promotion. Coventry City, Norwich City, whoever the case may be. Let's just say that they're going to go for it. They're going to try to get promotion. And let's say their budget is what? 30 million. Well, they're going to go spend 60 million. Fair enough. Well, let's say that they do and they gain promotion. All right. So now all of a sudden they have $100 million in solidarity payments. The problem is they spent 60. So now they have to cover that loss. They have to cover their losses. 30 million was 20 million was the budget. They spent 60. Well, they got to cover that 40 million differential. So they do, out of the $100 million. That literally only leaves them $60 million to build a Premier League squad. On top of whatever, on top of whatever revenue gain they were able to do for that season in the championship. There's not a lot of room to maneuver. And as a result, they actually end up finishing in the bottom 3 of the Premier League, and they go right back down. Now, granted, they have balloon payments, so they're able to stay within the top 10 of the championship. But that being said, doing these, playing that role where you're constantly going up and down. See, for an owner, it's beneficial because every other year you're going to get the solidarity payments of the Premier League, but you're still going to be able to have those balloon payments in case shit hits the fan. There's really no incentive of staying up. The idea should be staying up, but that being said, when you get relegated, there's going to be a $45 million windfall, a golden parachute for you, on top of the championship solidarity payments. So, teams can stick together, being a yo-yo team, because every other year you're going to have the benefit of, Premier League solidarity payments. If I'm an owner, I'm trying to stay up because I actually want those solidarity payments every single season. The idea isn't to blow your wad to get there. The idea is to stay there. Anyway, I know I just got off on a tangent, but let's see. Yeah, for some teams, the parachute payments are worth more than staying in the league. Yeah, 100%. 100%. The biggest problem is the fact that a lot of teams will will aim for the Premier League solidarity payments, because they understand that if they go over budget, they're going to be bailed out by those solidarity payments. So it doesn't matter that they only have $60 million to build the Premier League team. They'll figure it out. You're going to be able to get a lot of players on loan. You might be able to take advantage of the free transfers, right? I mean, that was the claim to fame for Luton Town. Luton Town was able to get 5 promotions in 10 years, and they were able to work their way up to the Premier League, utilizing academy prospects, developing them, moving them on for profit, and then signing, using the free transfer system in order to bring in players that were able to help them gain promotion. It's not a bad way to do it. But that being said, after they got that solidarity payment and they went down, they ended up spending well over their means, and it actually instead of actually getting promoted right back up, it was another relegation. So, not to mention the fact that their owner actually took money out of the team, but whatever. All right. So, as the thumbnail said, that this season was one of the weirdest seasons ever, and it was. Again, I cannot point to a season that even remotely compares. Maybe some of the old heads can, but that being said, for me, generally speaking, a 20-loss campaign equals relegation. And it just so happens that there are 3 teams that were worse, that were able to stave off relegation. The season started on a wobble. It opened up with a draw at Leicester City. After Tottenham took the lead, Jamie Vardy came back and shoved it up our ass. Followed up by a loss at Newcastle before we eventually got our first win of the season. And it was somewhere in that late September, October window where I think Spurs won 7 of 8 at one point, and it looked like they were getting into their season, and it was looking like they just might kick on when the injury crisis happened. At that point in time, let's back up, actually. Let's go back to the start of the season, because I had predicted that this team was going to finish anywhere between 6th and 8th. I didn't think that they did enough in the summer transfer window where I can honestly point and say, hey man, this is going to be a top 4 team. I didn't see it. I'll be the first to admit that. I thought this team had the potential to win a cup. I had them predicting winning. I actually had them predicting the FA Cup, because I thought by that point in time, enough season had passed where they know exactly who they are, and Ange Postecoglou would know exactly who he can count on. And this team actually was built better for cup competitions because of the because of the nature of the cups. They move pretty quickly. I thought that this team was better suited for cup play than the long haul of the Premier League season. But I figured, last year you finished 5th. The idea for year number 2 in a rebuild is to at least get to or get close to what your league finish was in that first season. If you can be within 2 spots of that, from that standpoint, I think you're actually doing pretty well in the league. But if you can actually be far more competitive in cup competitions and get that monkey off your back, that should be your goal for your second season under Ange Postecoglou, especially considering what this team is when it comes to transfer strategy. So coming into the season, I thought this team was going to finish between 6th and 8th, somewhere in that range area where they would actually be very competitive in cups. I had them winning the FA Cup and at least getting to a final of the Europa League. And sure enough, we got to within 90 minutes of Wembley in the League Cup, and we won Europa League. So from that standpoint, I think I was right. They were better suited for cup runs than they were for the league. But after that stretch in October, the one thing that I predicted came correct. When I looked at this team at the start of the season and I was looking at different positions, especially in the skill positions, I didn't see depth at all. We didn't have a backup striker, or at least a quality backup striker that we could depend on. And with all due respect, man, as much as I love Richarlison, you couldn't count on Richarlison. You just couldn't. Tequila says we didn't realize at the time just how poor United would end up being themselves this year, but at the time we were amazed. We went to Old Trafford and dominated. Yeah, I think we fancied ourselves a little bit better than what we did, and it's true because our starting 11, to be honest, our starting 11 when on paper it didn't necessarily look terrible. The biggest problem with our team was the fact that we just didn't have depth. And what's interesting about this was, so not only did we have a competent, deputy to Solanke, but we also didn't have a deputy for Brendan Johnson, somebody that would push Brendan Johnson. Now, on one hand, Brendan Johnson, I thought had actually a very productive season, and I think it was clear that he improved after year one. He was a lot more comfortable with Ange Postecoglou. He understood exactly what Ange Postecoglou needed from him. Now, granted, again, it still wasn't a consistent season from Brendan Johnson, but still, he was the league's leading scorer, the team's leading scorer this season. That has to count for something. But again, there was no solid backup. Anybody pushing Brendan Johnson. There was no challenge for Brendan Johnson. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. And then Sonny on the left-hand side. Didn't get off to a great start. That was the other thing, right? That was kind of flummoxed. There was never really a string of games where we can point to and said, Sonny was, in this period of time, Sonny was dominant. Yes, he scored goals, but it wasn't consistent. It wasn't chop and change, and it looked like he had lost a step as well too. So from that standpoint, when you lose your depth on the left-hand side, because we lost Wilson Odegaard early, Timo Werner continued to regress. And, what was left was a 17-year-old Mikey Moore who didn't necessarily get his opportunities this season instead of a January window with Matisse Tell. That ended up being that's how it ended up playing out. So when I looked at this team, I just said, listen, man, things have to break absolutely fantastically for this team to be in a position to challenge the top four. Did I think they were a top 10 team? Yeah. But this was not going to be an easy season. Like, if they were lucky, they would take advantage of one of the cup competitions and were able to at least end the trophy drought. But that being said, it was like, if this team suffered 1, 2, or 3 injuries, it was going to have a huge impact on them. I didn't necessarily think we were going to be a 60 goal scoring type of team. I thought it was going to be more of a struggle to score goals. And sure enough, that actually played itself out from January to March. This team was incapable of scoring multiple goals unless it was against the Southampton. But that being said, after that string of decent run of form between late September and October, we get into what I consider the worst stretch, where all of a sudden we start losing very good players. We lose our center back pairing. We ended up losing our goalkeeper. We're stuck with Fraser Forrester, Brandon Austin for a time before we get Antonin Kinski in the window. The interesting thing, though, knowing that this team needed upgrades and this team needed better resources. As we stumbled into the winter window, I don't think I'm the only one that didn't expect anything really to happen. Yeah, 100%. Seriously, I did not expect anything to happen in that winter window. As a matter of fact, Ange Postecoglou told us he was the one that warned us. And this was, I can remember back in late November, early December, where Ange Postecoglou gets on the mic and says, "Listen, because of the new Champions League and Europa League formats, more teams are going to be in it later. Whereas under the old format, under the group stage format, where you have 6 matches, your group stage is pretty much done by the start of the winter window. You know who's going to advance, you know who's going to be done, and from that standpoint, it makes it easier to identify players to bring in. Whereas this was the first season of the extended league phase, which pushed you right back to the end of the window. So there were going to be a lot of teams who are going to be far more reluctant to sell. And yet we still pulled Sparta Praha, who I believe was a Champions League team. We pulled their starting goalkeeper. We pulled their starting goalkeeper. Now, one of the things, and by the way, Tequila, Ange Postecoglou did not sign Timo twice. That was a Johan Langer decision to bring in Timo Werner twice. The crazy thing was, we knew exactly what we needed and where we needed it. How this works, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this, because I've been in a few rooms, so I know how this works. After the winter windows, yeah, of course. Listen, hold on, Tequila. If he says he gives the okay, then how this works is a director of football operations says, "Hey, listen, man, I got an eye on Timo Werner. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to be able to get him back. We're going to be able to get him on a loan. How do you like Timo Werner?" And he probably says, "Yeah, that's cool. I don't have a problem with it." Yeah, of course, he could have said no. And guess what? If he said no, they probably wouldn't have gotten him. But here's the thing. Your coach is not going to shit on upgrades. That's not going to happen. But anyways, this is how it works. So as soon as the winter window ends, you're setting yourself up for the summer window. So you know exactly who your targets are going to be. You know exactly where you're going to be looking in. And so you have your scouts in those areas, making sure that you have reports ready. And then if you have an analytics department, they're going to curtail around their analytics department around some of these targets to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze. You get into the summer window and you make your deals. Fair enough. The targets that you didn't get are going to be put back on the list for the winter window. And that's how it works, right? You have your big board, you have all your reports, you have all your ducks in a row lined up for the summer window, and maybe you have a list of 15 players that you're looking at, and maybe you get 6 of them. Well, the other nine are going to be put on that big list for the winter window, and as soon as the season starts and the window closes, you're going to be keeping tabs on those players leading into the winter window. You're going to understand exactly what those teams need, what they don't need, whether these players are going to be available or not. Chances are pretty good you're still going to be able to get 3 or 4 of them in the winter window if that's how you desire. That's how it works. And then after the winter window closes, you formulate your plan for the summer window, and then just keeps on rolling like that. That's usually how it works in a front office. You have a master list of targets that you think are going to be able to fit with your head coach and make this team better. The idea is paramount to being able to improve your club, which this team did not do in the winter window. I think that they were on a restricted budget, which makes sense because when you look at the summer window, you would possibly look at this by saying, they somewhat did it on a budget. They had a lot of outgoings and not necessarily that many incomings. And when they did have incomings, they were, anywhere between 20 to 60 million pound players. Nothing over that. It was what it was. But it starts off with Anton Kinski, who I believe was a $12 million transfer. They have they get Kevin Danso on a loan to buy option. And it takes them the entire window to land Batistel. But they also make a $70 million offer on Mark Gahey at the end of the window. At the end of the window. Right? Giving Crystal Palace no opportunity to find a replacement. Usually those are the type of deals that you're going to do at the top of the at the first week of the window. You're going to say, well, listen, man, here's an offer. And it gives Crystal Palace an opportunity to find out if they can get a replacement through the door. Because I guarantee you Crystal Palace is not going to say no to that if that was made in the first week of the window. But I digress. Let's see. Dan Davenport asks, you know a lot about Major League Soccer. Has Messi done an interview in English? No, he has not. No, he has not. But that being said, it was a winter window that exposed Tottenham Hotspur for what they are. And at that point, they were a clown show. Because listen, man, here's the one thing that you need to understand about Ange Postecoglou. And this is something that I believe he was sold I think he was sold a lemon. When you hire Ange Postecoglou, the first thing you have to understand is that you're hiring him to win trophies. Because Ange Postecoglou wins trophies. And he always has won trophies. Whether it was back in his Melbourne Victory days, the Australian national team, the Yokohama, whatever the fuck they're called, the Yokohamas. I don't know what their team name is, but Yokohama, Scotland. And people will say, well, yeah, it's lower leagues, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Winning trophies is not an easy thing to do. But when you hire Ange Postecoglou, you have to make sure that he has the type of squad depth that is going to be needed to compete over the course of the season. The other thing that you have to consider is that he's never taken over a rebuild before. He has always had more experienced players than not. That's not to say that he's never played with young players. He has. But he's never been in charge of a rebuild. The average age for all of his trophy winning seasons was like 26, 27. He's always had more of an experienced squad because experience matters. When he came into Tottenham Hotspur, he was looking at Sonny, he was looking at Harry Kane, and looking at this team like, oh hell yeah, Harry Kane and Sonny. In my system, these dudes are going to score, Harry's going to score 30 plus goals. And then right off the bat, Harry Kane gets sold. And then all of a sudden, the philosophy swapped to now we're going to go into a rebuild. So me personally, I thought he was given a bait and switch. He thought one thing, and he's expecting one thing, and then he's told like, no, we're not going in that direction. You're gonna have to make do with 19 to 20-year-old players, maybe some homegrown academy prospects. No, by the way, you're not going to be given the squad size that you're used to because we don't want to pay players to sit on the bench. Mind you, that in an Ange Postecoglou system, even if you have a 35-plus squad size, most of those guys are going to see if not all of them are going to see the field at some point. That's just how it works. But also, Ange likes to heavily rotate in games as well, too. It's not unheard of Ange Postecoglou making a 3 to 4 sided switch in the 60 to 65th minute to keep pressure going. But he didn't get that at Tottenham Hotspur. He didn't get experience, and he certainly didn't get large squad sizes. And that manifested itself this offseason. After stumbling to a fifth place finish last year, you were like coming off that and you're building on a fifth place finish. The ambition should be to make sure that at least every position has a deputy. That's it. Now you would like to see some Premier League experience as deputies. Maybe you can utilize the free transfer market to potentially bring in that squad player who either has Premier League experience or Champions League experience, knowing that you're going into the Europa League. But we didn't get that. He didn't get that. That's not what happened. And so when I look back to the start of the season, there's a reason why I had this 6 and 8. I even with injuries, I still think they were good enough to stay in the top 10. But certainly I did not look at this team and say this is a top 4 team. That's not how I looked at it at all. I always thought that he was given a bait and switch. He expected one thing and was delivered something else. And he had to make do with a young squad, a short squad, and if things went wrong, he was going to have to make do with what he had. And when it came to the winter transfer window, again, he's running cover for people that would not give him the tools to succeed. Was this season on Ange Postecoglou? In some aspects, yes. But for a large degree of the season, it was not on Ange Postecoglou. You cannot succeed giving the tools that he was given. And I don't care if you're Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Mikel Arteta, Hansi Flick, you name the best coaches in the world, and now take 9 of his starting 11 away for large stretches of time. And now you're running young kids and maybe a bunch of has-been, squad players. No disrespect to Ben Davis. A bunch of never wills and a bunch of has-been and never will be's. And that's your team. Yeah. There's a reason why we finished where we were. But that being said, the crucial mistake for Ange Postecoglou was kicking the Premier League season to the curb. When he got his players back, and he goes public and says, "Now that I have my players back, there are no excuses for our form." It was going to take some time, but that being said, you got your players back. But he made the conscious decision. To prioritize the Europa League and rotate in Premier League matches. That's what he did. And because of it, you're right, Tequila, we were fighting relegation. Because the emphasis wasn't on the Premier League. The emphasis was on making sure that we get a trophy. Because at the very least, he already knew that his job was going to be in jeopardy. I guarantee you it was in November that he realized that if something didn't happen, this was going to be it, and maybe he would get fired earlier. But he kept surviving week after week. the time to fire Ange Postecoglou was after Tamworth. When you roll into a non-league stadium, and mind you, our team wasn't great on that day. Our starting 11 wasn't great, but it sure as shit is good enough to beat Tamworth. And we nearly lost to Tamworth. That should have been the time. If you were going to make a move, that's the move to do it. That's the time to do it. But they didn't. And this is the result that we get. I know there is going to be fans who want Ange gone. I know Tequila, you're definitely one of them. Maybe Dan Davenport is another one of them. But that Jazz Fusion, I don't know where you stand. But that being said, on the one hand, now for those, most of you guys know that I respect Ange Postecoglou. I do. Because it is very hard to climb the ranks of global soccer. Some coaches get to a level, and that's where they peak and that's where they plateau. They try to challenge themselves a level up, but quickly find themselves back at that level because that's their wheelhouse, and they understand it. Very rarely do you see somebody go from Australia to the Premier League. Manager. Maybe a player or two. A player? Yeah, we've seen that. I think Crystal Palace back in the day had a dude that started in Australia and ended up in the Premier League. But I digress. But that being said, it's incredibly rare that happens. And it takes ambition, but it also takes that will to be better. And Ange Postecoglou continued to get better as a manager. And this is why, and to me, this is why I respect him. Because he went up. And he didn't give himself any excuses. And if that being said, if something didn't work, he was the first one to acknowledge it, and he was the first one to correct it. When he goes to Japan, he makes the step up from Australia to Japan, initially deals with adversity only for the next season to win the league. Same thing with Scotland. And then he wins a double. Like, I don't care what league you're in. Winning a double is not an easy task to do. Okay, so from my standpoint, he earned his spot at Tottenham Hotspur. But that being said, and I understand, guys, I can understand why you guys don't trust Ange Postecoglou. But that being said, for everything that fans were shouting at him to be more pragmatic, he did. He adjusted, and it won us the trophy. And in his 2 seasons in charge, he secured Europa League and now Champions League. And he was the first manager to win a trophy in 17 years. Regardless of what you think, he actually had a pretty successful tenure at Tottenham Hotspur. And I understand this year was not good enough. But when the dust settles, in his 2 years, he progressed this team forward. That's it. That's it. You have to be able to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge the fact that in 2 seasons, to secure Europa League and then to secure Champions League while winning that Europa League, that has to be acknowledged. In the inverse, it has to be acknowledged that he finished 17th place this year. He willingly challenged this team's bottom line. And if you know anything about Tottenham Hotspur, what matters the most, you don't think this team has progressed, Tequila? Really? Because they just won Europa League and clinched the Champions League. And a number of players actually got better this year. I disagree with that 100%. But the inverse is that Tottenham Hotspur, Daniel Levy cares about revenue and profit. That is what he cares about the most. And in the course of the last 5 years, they have spent a lot on transfers, affecting their bottom line, only to not see those fruits bear itself in the Premier League. One of the things that has to be acknowledged is the fact that there's a reason why Daniel Levy likes to finish in the top 5 of the Premier League, because it's that's where you make your money. And I know Derma says this all the time, that it's the bread and butter. The Premier League is the bread and butter, and he's right, because that's where you make the bulk of your money in the season. The higher you finish, the better the payout. And there was a time where in this season where Tottenham easily could have finished in the top 10. They were, had they focused on the Premier League. Now, granted, that's the trade-off, right? Because if they actually had focused on the Premier League, we probably wouldn't have won the Europa League. That was the inverse. But by doing that, you stomp on Daniel Levy's bottom line, and that's where I think that's the non-starter. That's pretty funny. But it's true. It's true. The worst campaign in club history. Also, he's the most successful manager in 40 some odd years. No, 100%. But that's the thing. It's like this team is all about being in the top 10 globally as far as revenue and profit. That is the thing that I think Daniel Levy appreciates the most, is the fact that this team has been sustainable and that this team continues to rise in valuation to the point when they do sell it, it's probably going to be worth $5 billion. Like, that's the end goal. And you can't have a guy stomping on your bottom line, because listen, one of the things you don't want to do is what you don't want to do is put themselves in a position where you're losing money. And when you finish 17th, that's exactly what you do. And yeah, by the way, Drew's right. He just made the club more money by winning Europa League. That was the trade-off. And by the way, he's right. If this team finished 10th, and that's my that's my take as well too. Had this team focused on the Premier League, they probably don't win the Europa League. But that being said, by winning the Europa League, not only do they get the prize money, but they set themselves up for a huge windfall. But that being said, though, by fucking off the league, though, they put themselves in a position where the Europa League money somewhat offsets it, but they're still going to take losses for it as well too. And when you look at the $260 million still owed on transfer fees, that plays a huge role into it as well too. So you can't have a dude stomping on your bottom line. But the way I look at this is 2 years, Europa League qualification, Champions League qualification, and a trophy. Jed Spence took the next level. Mikey Van de Ven and Christian Romero excelled in the second half of the season. Bergvall improved week for week before he got hurt. Archie Gray got better week to week as he progressed through the season. Mikey Moore looked pretty goddamn good when he played. I know a lot of fans like Matisse Tell. He improved as well too. There's a number of players that got better as the season progressed under Ange Postecoglou. I don't look at this as a one-man failure. I just don't. I really don't. When I think about the 17th position, I think this is a total club failure. Because one hand rubs the other. When you don't back a manager correctly, when you don't understand who your manager is and what it takes to make him successful, these are the things that happen. Because if you know anything about his history, he has also dealt with injuries as well too. That's part of his history as well too. But he's always had the squad size to make up for it. So one hand washes the other with this one. But anyway, whoever said Tequila says who said it was a one-man failure. Well, throughout the course of the season, a lot of fans will point to Ange Postecoglou for the injuries, point to Ange Postecoglou for the lack of goal scoring, this, that, and the other. But that being said, let's see. Dan Davenport says, Yorkerish from Sporting would be ideal. Oh, without a doubt, man. Oh, without a doubt. Having a dude that has had a 50-goal season across all competitions, yeah. I've been screaming for Victor Yorkerish for 2 years now. Yorkerish is unbelievable. Let's see. Jazz Fusion. Yet the club holds on to aging stars past their expiration date over nostalgia and marketing. I think you're referring to Sonny. It has been my contention that this summer should be the summer where they find their next face of the franchise, their next marketing, genius, right? Sonny tapped into a market that previously they didn't have, and it was beneficial for them. And now it's time to potentially get that next guy through the door, somebody that you can market unbelievably with. Victor Yorkerish is brilliant, but that's the thing. It's like this summer there are so many avenues for creativity where not only they can improve the team, but they can get that next guy. And it's my contention that I think that they should be improving on the left-hand side. I know that they're going to return Wilson Odebear, but again, just like Matisse Tell, I think he's raw. And I don't know, man. I think at most, Wilson Odebear is a squad player right now. The ceiling is there and you can see it, but like Matisse Tell, he's too raw. And I don't think you can depend on Matisse Tell throughout the course of the season. Maybe in small areas you can. But that being said, like, he's still an unproven prospect. Same thing with Mikey Moore, who I believe should go out on loan this year. Like, there should be a concerted effort to make sure that you bring in two wingers, one on each side. As long, same thing with the striker as well too. That whole front line, you should prioritize bringing in, all three, 100%. And if you can bring in another 10 to play along with James Madison, then you're gonna have to do that as well too, 100%. So what else do we have? I've been saying it for ages. It comes from the top. Ange is a part of the problem, as is the players. Yeah. Agreed. Because the player, you have to hold the players accountable, right? Even if Ange is rotating the Premier League, those that take the field have the obligation to play hard. Very rarely did they play hard. More oftentimes than not, they played it like a friendly. Biggest problem at Spurs has always been Danny Boy, but Levy has no say when players take the field. Yeah. True. Dermot says no one's bigger than the club. I would agree with that as well too. I would agree too. I would agree too. But the good news is there is Champions League next year, and that is something that you can sell in the offseason. You can sell it to players. As for the players that are in-house, for me, I'm keeping Betancourt and I'm keeping Romero. Without a doubt, I'm keeping those players. I want to build off the spine of the team that's already in place. Solanke, Madison, Betancourt, Romero, Van de Ven, Picardo. I want to build off of that. I don't want to replace. I don't want to chop and change. Now is not the time to do that. Now is the time to keep Now is the time to keep continuity and consistency, and you build off of it. Yeah, Jazz, you're right. If they made no moves if they made no moves in the summer transfer window, yes, they would get wrecked in the Champions League without a doubt. But if you end up getting, let's say that you brought in 2 wingers, another striker, and a 10, you bring in 4 players to add to it. Depending on the players, now all of a sudden there's a different dynamic with this team. Just saying. Before we go, I got something to show you guys, and apparently this leaked this morning. This is the potential home kit for next season. I wanted to show with you guys. I think we have already seen there. I think there is a Navy one as well too, but I wanted to show this one. I don't know how you guys feel about this. This is the rumored kit for the 2025-2026. This is the home kit. I don't know, man. You guys tell me. I didn't like this year's home kits, to be honest with you. I didn't like the blue sleeves. Was not a fan of the blue sleeves. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, so I'm just going to say that as we close this one, here's what I will say. That this season, yeah, I'm kind of interested in the new dark kits too. This is what I will say, is that this season was an aberration. I don't think that we were necessarily as bad as we were at certain points of the season. I think a lot of it was, at least in the first half of the season, heading into the second, a lot of it had to do with the injuries. But the second half of the season, it was a concerted effort to make sure we get a trophy. From that standpoint, that decision was made based on the fact that I think Ange Postecoglou understood there were players that he could trust and others that he couldn't, and he had to adjust his tactics to make sure it completely fit. I never thought this team was 20 losses bad. But I certainly did think that this team was good enough to win a trophy, and that at least materialized. But in the process, Ange put Daniel Levy in a very precarious situation, because now the question is, whether or not he's going to stick around, and it's justified as well too. And I will just leave it with this: if Ange Postecoglou goes, then so does Johan Lang. Scott Munn's already pretty much out the door. Like, if you're going to clean house, then clean house and do it correctly. But that being said, I would be surprised. As much as I respect Ange Postecoglou, I would not be surprised if Daniel Levy made that decision. And would it be a correct decision? Probably. After 42 years off, I follow the club. I've seen worse, and bad Levy football side needs to improve. Levy off the field has done a great job. People do forget Scola nearly bankrupted us. Yeah, listen, man, we're leaps and bounds better than we've ever been from a business standpoint. But we have spun our wheels as a fringe top 4 team. I think we have spun our wheels, which is why Paratici's coming back. Paratici's coming back to finish off exactly what he started. And I'm absolutely curious to see exactly which direction this club is going to go in. But that being said, one of the things that has to happen is there has to be leadership, which again comes from the top. There has to be a clear and decisive direction in which we go. And that starts with the identity of this club. We have to get back to what Tottenham Hotspur football is. I think we've gotten so far away from that. And I think that Paratici is able to do that. Now, if the decision to sack Ange comes to fruition, I would not be surprised. And in some contexts, I think it's warranted. I do. Listen, 20 league losses is not good enough. And I ask this question all the time. Is the Europa League, does that Europa League mask the 20 losses? And the answer is probably not. Probably not. And I don't think you can. I don't think you can. And I think from that standpoint, I think the decision might be easy. But that being said, Daniel Levy also has to think of this club as well, too, because there's a lot of players that want to stay. It's going to be contingent on Ange Postecoglou. I think he has a lot of credit in the bank with his players. And I think the players believe in the messaging that Ange Postecoglou is giving them. That with the right backing this summer, this team can really kick on and do some special things. And I actually do agree with that sentiment. I think this team winning the Europa League, I think they proved that they are able to get across the line. But does that mean that Ange Postecoglou has to be the guy in order to deliver it? That I don't believe in. I think with the right manager, whether it be Inzaghi, whether it be Xavi, I think with the right expectation level where these players understand exactly where they stand, I still believe that this team is still capable of kicking on correctly. I really do. As much as I like Ange, man, as much as I do, I also believe that this team still has that type of talent where if it's added to correctly, that this team actually can achieve very good things. So I'll just leave it at that. Let's see. Levy will stick with them because I believe in my heart of hearts, Danny Boy got what he wanted, Champions League. So Ange will give him what he wanted. Maybe. Jazz Fusion says you will clutch bankruptcy forever, Dermot. Can't move on for it. Yeah. Well, but that being said, it was also a pivotal time. He won the second most important Euro Cup. Whatever we think, he needs major backing with players because last summer, January, he was not backed at all. Correct. He wasn't. Let's see. No manager will ever be backed the way you want, so you better hire someone who can actually coach. I don't know, man. It takes a very good coaching job to win a trophy. I think that was proven. Tequila backs it up. Let's see, Jazz. The fact that a 14-year-old waking up, so I have club to follow. It was hard. Yes, Levy, not perfect, but we could have been worse. Glazers, for one. As I said before, no one's bigger than the club yet. Then he says, I'm worried we sack Ange and then end up with Southgate. Yeah, no, here's the thing. Southgate has never, ever been linked with Tottenham Hotspur. Not only that, I don't think he's really on any radar. I haven't heard the name Gareth Southgate in quite a while, and I certainly have not heard any links with Tottenham Hotspur. Maybe initially, but no. No. And the biggest reason why Gareth Southgate is not in the running for top jobs is because I think prior to his appointment with the U21s of England, I think he was with Middlesbrough. You know, he hasn't necessarily coached in the upper echelon of the Premier League before, regardless of his track record with the England senior national team. He doesn't necessarily have that high level Premier League experience. And there's a reason why, Big Six clubs, well, number one, they don't have any openings, but number two, probably would look a little, would balk at the idea. Right. So anyway, I'm going to call it good today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, but also head over to THFC Till We Die and hit the like and subscribe buttons over there. But yeah, man, today's been fun. Yeah, next week, by the way. So tonight we have the MLS live stream. It's going to be the Chicago Fire at Orlando City FC. That's going tonight. That's going to go down tonight at 7:30 Eastern U.S. time, 12:30 U.K. time for all you night rats who just love football. I will be back tonight for that MLS live stream, and I'm sure Derma is going to be back at some point this weekend, as they're going. As I believe he's going to be back with Newsbeat at least. So definitely look forward to that. Next weekend, we have our award show, the Spursies. I hand out my Spursies for the 2024-2025 season, and I believe Dave Harris of the Irish Hotspur will be along for that one. And the crazy thing about it is we're going to be handing out our trophies for the good and also for the bad as well too. It's going to be quite a show. So I hope you guys are going to be around for that one as well too. And I love handing out the Spursies. So I hope you guys are going to be around for that one as well too. So a lot of good things are going to be happening on Stateside Footy. Make sure you hit your like and subscribe buttons. A lot of good things are going to be happening at THFC TWD. So make sure you hit your like and subscribe buttons because we are on a race to 5,000 subs. And Stateside Footy is on a mission for 1,000. So make sure that you do the right thing by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. It's a good one, man. Take care, guys. Have a great day.
Rusted goalposts under fading skies.